All right. Welcome in the A to Z Sports Big Orange podcast. I am Charlie Burris. That is Zach Reagan. And we are finally back here doing our regular live stream and wherever you listen throughout the world. Thank you very much for tuning in to us. We talk everything Vols every week here on the Big Orange podcast. And if that's something that you want to listen to on the regular, go over to the A to Z Sports Podcast Network feed. When you get there, rate, review, but you got to subscribe. If you do subscribe, you won't miss our shows when we drop them on Mondays. And speaking of Mondays, it is 1 right now at 5 p.m. Eastern time, and that means we're live on YouTube, as I already mentioned. A to Z Sports Tennessee Volunteers on YouTube. Go there, subscribe, but more important than anything, hit that notification bell. If you do hit the notification bell, you'll be notified when we go live, so then it doesn't matter when it happens. You can hop in here and join us, be a part of the show, comment, go back and forth. It's always a great time. At Charlie_Burris, at ZachTNT, at A to Z Sports, Facebook.com/A to Z Sports Nashville, and A to Z Sports.com for everything that Zach writes on the internet. And oh my gosh, it has been a roller coaster of emotion since last week. I'll just start here. What's up, Zach? How you doing, man?
Yeah, it's definitely been a interesting few days, and certainly interesting with Tennessee sports and everything that's going on. But happy to be getting closer to spring football here. That's always nice, and baseball going, basketball. So plenty going on here with Tennessee athletics right now, good and bad. You got some. Not so great vibes around the Lady Vols. Not great vibes after the series loss to Kent State this weekend in baseball, but obviously we all know that Tennessee beat Vanderbilt over the weekend, so that's always something fun to celebrate.
We're going to talk about it all, but I would be remiss if we didn't mention here right off the jump something. I mean, speaking of emotions, something that happened last week. It was, I think, the day after the show we did last week, Thursday. Wes Rucker, a guy who both of us have worked with and around when we used to do Tennessee media full time, passed away in a horrific car accident. And just the most shatteringly sad situation. And obviously every thought, prayer, good vibe, anything that I can give to his family, it's unimaginable. But I would just say that just what makes it so tough, he had a reputation with Tennessee fans and his Tennessee media where he was a guy that everybody gave, a lot of people gave him a hard time. But at the end of the day, he was so valuable in that community. And just passionate about what he did, but also just like the way that he tweeted about his son so lovingly and his wife and everything. I mean, you saw that he was an incredibly genuine, great guy. I didn't get to know him that well. I was around a pretty decent amount for a number of years there. But I mean, just an unimaginable loss. I don't know if you want to say anything, Zach, but I knew we just had to start there.
Yeah, I haven't really said a whole lot about it just because it is kind of tough. I didn't know it's really tough and incredibly tragic. I didn't really know Wes on a personal level. I was around him, like you said, from time to time in the press box and at Tennessee practices sometimes that I would be at and different things like that, media days. And it was always a great guy to be around. But I think the thing that sticks with me, from a professional standpoint with Wes was that he was always authentically himself. He was genuine. You knew who he was. He wasn't going to change, for you or for me or for anyone else, right? Like he was going to be himself. And that's something that in this business and really just, I think in life in general is super important, being genuine, being the best version of yourself and just being true to who you are. I think Wes embodied that. I remember when I first jumped on Twitter back in 2011, he was one of the only main guys that you saw tweeting about Tennessee sports. And I specifically, this just kind of stuck with me because that's kind of when I started into this career. And really that 2012 Tennessee coaching search is kind of what kick-started me into this. And I've followed a lot of what Wes, was writing about and talking about at that time. And just how grounded he was even back then. I mean, the hot take culture and some of the stuff that the internet has devolved into over the years. He was never a part of that, even in the early days. Like he was always so grounded in his takes and all that. So it's always respected that about him, and I guess it kind of had an influence on me in a lot of ways. And then just from the personal aspect, like you said, just his wife, his 4-year-old son, a child on the way is just tragic beyond words. And it's been great to see the community rally around his family. Hopefully that support continues because they'll need that support beyond this week. Life will go on for all of us, but that's a massive hole in their lives that will never go away. So that's certainly support that will need to continue on beyond this season.
Yeah, it is just so brutal for his family. Can't stop thinking about him since it happened. But yeah, I mean, I absolutely echoed that. He was one of the OGs. A guy that just kind of everybody you saw it here. Everybody knew him in some even just tangential ways. Scott Van Pelt was out here tweeting about it. I saw it in People magazine, USA Weekly, or whatever that magazine is. Like it was all over the place. His impact was massive. And then you saw, I mean, the last time I looked, that GoFundMe had $720,000 raised.
Yeah, incredible.
Like yes, and it speaks to who he was and what what people knew him as and respected him as too. So it is pretty incredible. I guess I will share just this one moment. There's like a funny thing that happened with Wes involved in my time in Tennessee media. I only ever truly got in trouble once in all the time that I covered Tennessee sports, like day to day, like in Anderson Training Center and stuff. And it came from they used to just have this like windowless closet that they stuffed the media into during Bush Jones era.
Yeah.
And if I'm thinking correctly, it was me and Wes just like talking. And in the course of that conversation, I don't remember what he said to me, but in the course of that conversation, I said something particularly sideways about Butch, which I clowned on Butch constantly. I was on the radio at that point every morning clowning on Butch because he was an idiot and a clown and he drove the entire program into the ground. He deserved every second of it. But I did it inside the facility. And I don't know who ratted me out. I have a pretty good idea who it was. And it wasn't Wes. It was, believe me. But the very next day after that conversation that we had where I said whatever I said, the sports information director pulled me into his office and was like, you can't be in the facility talking about Butch that way. He was like, you can say that outside of here, but in here you can't do that, or unless you want to lose access, all of these things. And it just made me want to go after Butch even harder after that. That just a absolutely ridiculous story that involved Wes in my time there. But yeah, just thinking of him, his family, and just man, so sad. But we do have to get to what the show is going to be about tonight. We're going to start off with another thing that makes you feel probably down, but also maybe excited, hopeful for the future. Joey Aguilar, in a news dump on Friday afternoon, gets his injunction denied on home court. In Knox County, the judge denies his attempt to get eligibility to come back to Tennessee to play. And I think it was this judge coming from a genuine place of not wanting to open another sort of Pandora's box thing. While at the same time, I personally disagree, because until the NCAA brings down actual rules and there are actual guardrails, or either the NCAA goes away and we put in actual rules and things, I mean, it is open season. A guy, I forget what school he played for, but they granted a guy a 9th year the other day.
The Montana State guy.
Montana State. A 9th year. I mean, this guy's in college almost a decade. And he gets that year from the NCAA, and yet for Joey, for what would have been his 4th year at the D1 level, at the actual NCAA level, he gets denied by this judge. I disagree with this. I think he should have been able to play, should have been able to make his $2 million. But obviously, the real conversation that it leads to is what does Tennessee do at quarterback now? But before we get to that, I don't know what you thought about the ruling, Zach.
Yeah, I mean, what a roller coaster for everybody follows Tennessee sports over the last few months, because going into this offseason, I wrote so many times I could have just copied and pasted it every day. That, like, okay, maybe Joey comes back, but it's viewed as unlikely, right? Like, we all thought it was no chance that he's going to, or it's a very slim chance that he'd be back, in December, going into the portal as they're pursuing Sam Levitt and some of these other options. We're still thinking very unlikely. That's a Hail Mary, right? And then all of a sudden he gets out of the Pavia suit, starts his own lawsuit or whatever the correct terminology is there, files it in Knoxville so he can kind of have home court advantage, and he gets the temporary restraining order, and suddenly we're thinking this is a slam dunk, right? Like he's playing Tennessee, like it's going to happen. Then the hearing happens. We all know how that went. The judge, went to Tennessee. He pushed back a little harder than we expected, right? So after that, I think we all started looking at this like a coin flip. So I wasn't surprised when the actual ruling was handed down. I was just more surprised at the roller coaster of events that led to it. I think he should have been allowed to play based on the precedent that was set with the Pavia thing last year that allowed Pavia and Aguilar to play in 25. And we said it before on the show, if 1 year of junior college doesn't count, how should 2? Now, in the actual, rules, like the junior college debate, I don't really know where I stand on that. I honestly haven't picked a side. I guess you could say I've heard, reasonable debates on both sides of that, why it should count, why it shouldn't count. I thought one interesting conversation happened this morning with Greg McElroy and Cole Kublik, who both suggested that it's ridiculous that you could go play junior college, for 4 years and then go play NCAA football for 4 years or whatever the time frames are in that situation. And McElroy's reasoning was, you've got to prove to me that was your only option, that you couldn't have walked on somewhere. Well, Joey walked on at City College of San Francisco in 2019. He was a walk-on at a JUCO program. That was his only option. I mean, that's the worst option you could possibly choose coming out of high school. A junior college that most of us that even follow junior colleges have never even heard of. He started at the very bottom, right? Red-shirted, then had a season canceled because of COVID, transfers to Diablo Valley Community College in 21 and 22, has to beat out the returning starter there. And only then does he finally earn an opportunity from Appalachian State, a non-Power 5 school, but a Division I school. Finally, he earns that opportunity, and then he's able to parlay that into the transferring to UCLA, and then things happened the way they did, and then he kind of fell into the Tennessee gig. But if anyone's a story of starting from nowhere, having no options out of high school and grinding their way through it, not giving up when he easily could have. We know his whole backstory of almost being a firefighter and all that stuff. If anyone deserves a 4th year, I think it would be him. And given that situation, how unique it is, especially considering that you allowed Pavia to play last season when he was technically out of eligibility, none of it really makes a lot of sense, but nothing makes sense right now. I think ultimately the decision was made exactly for the reason you said. That judge didn't want to be the one that sets this basically huge precedent moving forward that no junior college year should count towards NCAA, because that's kind of what the box that would have been opened had he made that ruling. So I understand his side of it. I still think it would have been fair to let Joey play, but we are where we are. He could appeal. Very unlikely he appeals, as VolQuest, as Austin Price or Brent Hubbs one pointed out. The appeal process drags on for months. He simply cannot go through that with the NFL draft coming up. It would be unlikely he'd win that appeal anyway at this point. I think we probably all agree on that. So he's kind of got to focus on the NFL at this point. So, Tennessee is where they are with the quarterback situation.
Yep, it's over and it is what it is. And, Kenneth Haney in the comments, he says, what's the difference between him and Pavia? That's the problem with college football and what's wrong with Tennessee trying to win and be elite. Uh, there is a difference between him and Pavia, but not a whole lot. And yeah,
Pavia is still suing the NCAA. I mean,
yeah,
he's not coming back in 26. He's going to the NFL, but he's still filing that suit that would set a precedent moving forward for everyone that comes after him.
yeah, and I mean the theory is that you could open up a situation like this. Basically, D1 schools could like stash players at the JUCO level and have them play for years and develop and bring them up and have not taken any of their eligibility. That it does definitely creates just another workaround. There's a ton of workarounds already, but just creates another one. But I mean, how realistically, this doesn't come up just a ton where guys ascend from the JUCO ranks. It absolutely happens, but it doesn't happen a lot. It's not like you would get with the Charles Bediako situation. Like that would have truly been Pandora's box. I mean, you're talking like you want to talk about like baseball. Baseball, there's an entire league of guys who would at that point suddenly be eligible again to come back for like at least another. Well, I guess with baseball, you have to stay for 3 years. So they'd be able to come back for another year. Suddenly, after playing in the minor leagues, like you'd really be opening something up. Here, it's not as high stakes, in my opinion. But fine. He decided what he decided. And so Tennessee now has to find a quarterback. Is it going to be George McIntyre? That's kind of the presumption for most people. Faison Brandon will be there. Also, the kid from Colorado, Ryan Staub, who is probably just a just in case piece that they're stashing away. But it's an interesting situation because I thought about this. Josh Heupel, when he has made executive decisions on quarterbacks, which I think in some sense Joey Aguilar would have been that. I think that's what Heupel wanted. I think he wanted Joey Aguilar back because he was comfortable. Would have been kind of a Hendon Hooker situation, getting an old guy back for another year who knows the system, has already played in it. But when Heupel has been forced into a tougher or just forced into a quarterback situation, that's where he's found his best quarterbacks. So it gives me that much hope. But I will say this. It's just a way bigger risk here. And there's no way around it. Because I think what you avoid with Joey Aguilar is any of that learning curve. You don't have to get him acclimated to playing an SEC schedule, playing big boy football. You don't. He has done that, and a ton of it. And George McIntyre simply hasn't. And you're going to have kind of that adjustment period like Arch Manning had last year, where he kind of stunk at the beginning of the year. But by the end of the year, you were looking at him going like, okay, this guy will play. Well, we're getting something here. And you're just not going to be able to avoid that adjustment period. And how many games do you lose in there? Unless he comes in and he's Trevor Lawrence, how many games do you lose in that time period? That's what's tough about it to me. Or is it going to be Faison Brandon? I'll throw it to you.
Well, before we get to those two, I think it's interesting the comments because Wesley and MG Way here in the comments kind of said exactly what I was thinking as you were talking there. Not that I think Ryan Staub is going to win this battle. I have no idea. I mean, none of us really have any idea until spring practice gets underway on March 16th how this is going to go. But Staub does kind of remind me of the Hendon Hooker situation because I remember when he transferred in when Jeremy Pruitt was still, before Pruitt got fired and he brought Hendon Hooker in, he was kind of an afterthought at that point. Like we really didn't consider him as a real option. Even after Heupel got hired, I mean, we're hyping up like is Harrison Bailey the guy? Hey, Brian Maurer is a guy that Heupel, had recruited previously a little bit. Or is it, Joe Milton, who he ended up going and getting after spring practice that we all of a sudden got excited about because of the physical traits? You never really know how these things will play out. So I don't think we should completely write off Staub. I do think he was brought in mostly as a depth option just because I think the way Heupel looked at this is I think he knew the odds of Aguilar coming back were a long shot. That's why he went after Sam Levitt. He wasn't going to go for broke trying to get Sam Levitt, just with the injury concerns and getting into a bidding war when you're already paying George McIntyre and Faison Brandon 7 figures, likely, both of them. So it made sense that was kind of the path that Heupel took. He was just kind of in a tough spot at the quarterback position because of the uncertainty with Joey. And it's like, okay, you don't want to go get an option that might be slightly better than McIntyre, or maybe you run McIntyre off then. I mean, it was a delicate situation to navigate. So I thought the Staub addition was a savvy move by Heupel, probably the best move he probably could have made in that spot. But obviously the focus is going to be on McIntyre and Brandon. Those are your, at least rankings wise, those are your two most talented quarterbacks on the roster. I think George is somebody that's been Heupel's guy for quite some time. And Faison is too, obviously, but with McIntyre having that year in the system, he played in an offense similar to this and at times in high school, because he had several different offensive coordinators in high school, but one of them ran pretty much the same offense that Tennessee runs. So he's played in this before. He's got the year of practice under his belt. I wish he had more in-game experience. I wish Heupel would have taken a different approach in that bowl game, especially with the way that it played out, losing to Illinois. You really had nothing to lose there by giving McIntyre some significant reps. I'm not saying that he should have started over Joey, but I would have liked to have seen him play in some real game situations where you're not just trying to run the clock out. I think that would have been valuable for him, going into 26, because my gut says he's probably going to be the starter unless somebody gets hurt. I just think the familiarity with the locker room, the receivers, he's been thrown with Mike Matthews and Braylon Staley and these guys a lot longer than Faison Brandon has. So they got some timing down, and timing and chemistry in this offense is everything. Like, we've learned that. That's kind of the biggest learning curve. Isn't just the playbook. It's getting the timing and the feel down with your receivers, because there's so many choice routes in this. There's so many decisions that the quarterback and the wide receiver are making while a play is happening based on what the defense is doing, and they've got to know how each other's going to react to that. And Hendon Hooker and Jalen Hyatt had that down perfect. And you saw Joey really develop that pretty quickly with the receivers on this team last season. So I just think that's going to give McIntyre such a leg up in this competition. And I think outside of that, the physical part, his weight has been the big talking point this offseason. Brent Hubbs said last week that he's already added 5 or so pounds under the new strength coach, was the way Hubbs put it. That's a month.
Okay.
If he's done that in a month, that's pretty impressive. He was listed at 197 on Tennessee's website in the offseason, so that would put him at like 202, 203 in that range. I think you got to get him to like 210 to 215. I'm sure that's doable before August. That's a lot, but I think if you can get him at least to like 210, I think that's okay. I mean, I think he can hold up. I mean, it's going to be tough. He's going to be playing a 9-game SEC schedule if he is the starter. He's going to take some hits. He's going to have some tough moments. He's going to have to play through some stuff. But that's quarterbacks in the SEC. Hendon Hooker did it in 22. Joey did it at times last season. We learned he had surgery after the year, so who knows how that was impacting him by the end of the season. But McIntyre's definitely got to add that weight, but he's on track at this point with the new strength coach and the new nutrition staff as well.
This does kind of feel like a situation sort of like last year with Joey Aguilar. They brought him in, and all of us talking heads still sort of had to say, well, you never know. What if it's George? It wasn't going to be George. It wasn't, because they paid that kid $1.1 million or whatever to come down here to play football. They weren't going to not start him. With George, it just, a lot of people are saying, oh, well, what if it's Faison? I mean, just look at Josh Heupel's track record. He always goes with seniority. Not always. Not every single time. Sometimes he's played freshman, but it's mostly been on defense where he was making less of the decision. He always leans towards seniority, generally speaking. And just, George, at this point, should know it. We know to a very small extent that he can make some of the throws. And the weight conversation is not that we don't think that he can make throws. I think he has the skill set. That's already in there. Like, he has the skill set to throw the ball a long way and to throw a screen pass in this offense. Like, that's that's not the concern. It's about when you have to run and you get cracked, how does your body hold up? And that has to get better. And it's really for his health. It's really important, going forward. Um, the so I yeah, it's George in my mind until I see otherwise. I hope that Faison Brandon is a revelation like that. I mean, that would be incredible. But it's just hard to believe. Everybody talks about Trevor Lawrence because it's a complete outlier.
Yeah.
It was shocking when that happened. I mean, he did he take over for a guy that was already there?
That was
Older?
the guy. Was it the guy that transferred out? What was his name?
Kelly.
No, yeah, it had the odd last name. It was hard to
Yeah,
pronounce.
I can't
I
think.
think that's the way that went. He started like the first game or two, maybe that season for Clemson,
And then Lawrence took over.
Yeah,
And maybe that ends up being the case. George isn't serviceable, and they try Faison out. Faison comes in and balls out.
Yeah.
Who knows? But I just think it's going to be him until it's not.
I do think Brandon is a player that with a ton of upside. I mean, Faison's a winner. He won back-to-back state championships in high school. I think the big concern for me, and I want to say big concern, but a slight concern for me is going from being and look, Faison has obviously prepared to be a college football quarterback. That's a different life that he's leading than most high school athletes when you get to that level. Every minute of every day is dedicated to what's best for my football career. So he knows how to be that kind of guy. But at the same time, he was still a high school senior, just a few months ago, right? I mean, he should still be a high school senior right now, getting ready for like prom and stuff like that. But going from high school to college is such a huge jump. You're away from your family. It's practice every single day. It is a grind. Even if you're not playing in games, it is a grind. That schedule is no joke. And as a senior, he missed a lot of time. He missed almost the entire regular season with a hand injury to his throwing hand that he got hurt in the first game of the year for Grimsley and didn't come back until, I think November, maybe right before the playoffs started, and played well. That's a lot of time that he missed where he was not going through practices, right? Maybe walkthroughs, but he wasn't participating in practices. To go from that to all of a sudden, I'm starting 13 games, 9 of them are against SEC, or 12 regular season games, and 9 of them are against SEC opponents. And I'm going on the road and I'm dealing with all this. I mean, that's a huge adjustment for any young athlete. And I'm not trying to doubt him or say that he can't do it, because we'll see when he puts on the pads and starts practicing next month and later this fall. But I don't think it's fair to expect him to make that jump and to go be like that Trevor Lawrence type of guy and carry you to a playoff. If it happens, that's awesome. We will all be very happy and excited to watch it. And it's been a long time since Tennessee's had a player like that, a freshman come in at quarterback and do some stuff like that. I mean, Tennessee's never really actually had that. I mean, maybe Eric Ainge in 04 was the closest you had. Even Peyton had some, slow moments, slow go out of the gate, but I just wouldn't expect that to happen. But he's still a player with an incredibly high ceiling that, has Heisman Trophy talent. But I think McIntyre, you could say the same thing about him, that he has a high ceiling with Heisman Trophy talent.
Yeah, I think so. Your point about Faison being a winner is interesting, because I guess I just think about it because watching, this is another awesome thing we didn't even mention because it's completely irrelevant to the show, but the Olympic gold medal game in hockey over the weekend, men's hockey, one of the greatest sporting events I've ever witnessed with my own 2 eyes. It was just absolutely fantastic. And one of the great seminal moments in American sports. But Connor McDavid, on the final line that was out there when Jack Hughes scored the game-winning goal that we all saw and freaked out about, I'm not sure, like, a lot of people that were watching were just watching because it was the Olympics, and they're not huge hockey people. But I'm a big hockey fan. I love the Predators. And the 3 guys that were on the ice for Canada are arguably the 3 best players in the entire sport of hockey. And I'm not sure, like, if anybody didn't realize that, if you didn't know that, I mean, Connor McDavid, Cale Makar, and Nathan McKinnon are like 3 of the best dudes that play that sport. And they specifically Connor McDavid, he has this reputation where he can get you there, and then he no shows, and he just he blows. He had 0 points in Game 7 of the World Cup the Stanley Cup last year against the Panthers. He no showed in the final game of the Stanley Cup last year, and in this game, I mean, he went from he almost scored a goal in that overtime to getting his pocket picked by Zach Rowinski, who then passed it over to Jack Hughes, who won the game. And the United States had these scrappy dudes who won the game for the United States, and they just gutted it out. Jack Hughes literally got his face smashed in half, and then he goes and he scores a game-winning goal because he's a winner. That's what he does. Honestly, the guy, there's a couple of guys. We don't need to get into the hockey war of all that stuff, but the point of that being, you don't necessarily have to be like the number one most talented everything guy. Are you a winner?
Yeah.
Can you drag your team to a victory? Because that's what you are going to need. You need a warrior out there. And if Faison Brandon is that, let the man play. I don't care. Look at the way that Nate Amin has come along for this basketball team. He went from timid to doesn't really want to do anything, and he went and gutted out a win for you at the end of the weekend. We're about to talk about that.
I think that's a great comparison. I think that's a great comparison because Nate Amin, I think he's a winner. He's about the right stuff, and he had a slow start to his career, and he's going to have he didn't have the greatest game against Vandy, but made the shot when he made the biggest shot of the game. So I think there's a lot to being a winner, and that could be. It's not the end all be all coming out of high school because high school competition can be so uneven across the country, and there's some things are just out of your control. But I think just being that voice in the locker room, bringing the team together, making the players around you more confident, I think is super important. So that means you got to be selfless. You can't put the attention on yourself, good or bad. You got to be consistent, the same guy every day. And I don't think you can lead because, again, there's so many high school football can be so volatile because the talent discrepancies, and they're high school kids at the end of the day is your, left guard that's not going to play college football and going to show up that night type of deal. Maybe he doesn't, he costs you the game. But for Faison to lead his team to multiple state championships, I think says a lot about who he is. And I think you have to have those guys. And I think talent is talent, and you got to have talent. But I'm a Charlotte Hornets fan, and you look at LaMelo Ball play, and that dude can do whatever he wants to with a basketball. He can shoot lights out sometimes. But if you go back and look at him in high school at Chino Hills, it was, LaMelo scores 40, they lose by 30, type of deal. Like, it wasn't about winning. The focus wasn't winning. And he's been in the NBA since 2020, and the Hornets are just now getting to the point where they know how to win, where he knows how to win. He's still doing stupid stuff like getting in wrecks in the middle of downtown Charlotte, but I think that's super, super important. And
it is.
I know Faison has that, so that is one of the reasons I'm really excited about him and coming to Tennessee, because I don't know if Tennessee's, I think Hendon Hooker was that. I don't think Joe Milton was. I don't think Nico was. I think Nico was, I'm not as down on Nico as a lot of people because of what happened, but he was a 7-on-7 camp star that the focus was on making him the most attractive quarterback recruit in the country. And you just never saw that with Faison. This dude's the number one recruit in the country for a long time, according to 24/7 Sports, and I don't think I've ever seen a guy fly that under the radar. His recruitment wasn't that loud. He committed to Tennessee well over a year before he signed with them and never wavered, and you never heard anything else about it, shut it down, and just went on about his business. So I think those are the kind of guys you want. Those are the kind of guys you need. You look at Fernando Mendoza at Indiana and his demeanor and his personality and his makeup.
Warrior.
Right. And I think that's kind of what you're getting from Faison. And maybe that's what you get from George McIntyre too. I didn't follow his high school career quite as closely, but I think he's pretty determined to win this job. So I think you've got a couple of pretty strong options that could be good leaders at that position.
I hope so. I hope you get a guy like that. Like it just made me think of it. There's kind of a notorious story, if I'm thinking of this correctly, with going back to Connor McDavid in hockey, where he wrote a letter to Sidney Crosby asking, like, how do you deal with the pressure? Because Sidney Crosby, is one of the best hockey players of all time, has won multiple Stanley Cups, one of them against the Nashville Predators. Kill me.
At least he didn't play this. At least he didn't play yesterday morning.
He didn't play yesterday. But Connor McDavid wrote a letter to Sidney Crosby being like, how do you do this? I don't want a letter writer back there. I want a guy out there who wants to go out and just take this thing by the horns. And I don't mean to clown on Connor McDavid that much. I mean, he's the best hockey player in the world at the moment, but it's, I think everybody knows what I mean. And so, yeah, I hope that Faison is that guy. And we'll see, even if it is George, we'll see in a year from now.
Ultimately, the offensive line has to hold up for either one of these guys to have a chance. I mean, that's going to be the big thing going into the season. That kind of goes hand in hand with the quarterback deal. If that's not right, it really doesn't matter who you have back there. You're going to have some catastrophic moments if that's not right. And you've got a few changes, so we'll dive into that more as spring practice gets underway and some of that shakes out. But that's going to be a pretty important ingredient to quarterback success for Tennessee.
Oh, yeah. And we'll talk about it all. Obviously, when everything starts unfolding, spring and fall, we will be here spring practice. I mean,
March 16th.
Yep, pretty much right up on it here. We'll discuss it all. SC basketball tournament is 3 weeks away. And baseball, if it'll last all the way into June, then we'll be right up to football. Not sure it's going to last in June after this past weekend, but we'll talk about that at the very end. Let's talk a little bit about basketball. Tennessee has now won 8 of the last 9 and went on Saturday to Vanderbilt's stupid, weird, square gym with the dumb floor and the whole thing. And they won. And they won against the Vanderbilt team that I think is very formidable. A Vanderbilt team that got back one of its best players that had been injured for quite a while. Darius Miles came back in that game and just gutted out an awesome win. I mean, it was just gritty and clutch. You had clutch shots from Bishop Boswell, the clutch shot from Nate Mint, clutch free throws from Jacoby Gillespie, and then I guess technically one from Amari Evans. And it was just a really great win. To me, looking at the entire season, probably your second best win of the year, next to Houston, and would be right up there if that wasn't on a neutral floor. I guess you could argue the Vandy's better because Houston was on a neutral floor. Sort of what I meant to say there. But just a really impressive win, and I think you're, dare I say that, figuring it out at the right time. Do you think I'll say I'm very afraid of this game tomorrow night at Missouri. Very, very winnable, but also real losable for Tennessee. Yeah. How are you feeling?
Yeah, I don't like that game being sandwiched in between Vanderbilt and Alabama, who the G League guy's still trying to find a way, of course, right before they play. I mean, it's not going to happen, but, unsurprising. Now, I was super encouraged by the win against Vanderbilt, not just because they won the game, just me and you, we had already accepted it as a loss, just moved on to the next one before the game had even happened. And Tennessee, to win that game without Nate Mint carrying you, like he didn't have a great shooting night. Was he like 3 of 13? I think he was perfect from the free throw line, but 3 of 13 from the field. In recent some of these games during the winning streak, he'd been averaging 22, 23 points a game. So to win that game without him going crazy, it just showed how gritty this team can be. Like you said, the shots by Boswell is 2 shots late that he hit that were huge. Without those shots, Nate Mint's not in position to hit the turnaround, really highly difficult shot that he hit when there was no shot to be made. The defense, as the Vanderbilt coach pointed out, was perfect, and he still managed to turn around and hit that shot. One of the biggest shots of the season for Tennessee, I guess you'd say. It just showed that they can, gut out a win, because we've kind of questioned that with the way they've lost to Kentucky and just really let some teams get back in games at times. Like, does this team have what it takes to, get over the hump in some of these tough games? Because those are the type of games you're going to play in the SEC tournament, especially the NCAA tournament. Just because you get up 15, I mean, these teams, it's do or die at that point. Like, they're not going to give in. They're not just going to, you know, mail it in for the day and move on to the next one. There's going to be, big leads that evaporate quickly. And Tennessee's shown that they're capable of letting a big lead disappear very quickly. So just to stick in that game and pull it out the way they did was definitely encouraging for me, especially on the road. Wish they could have done it against Kentucky. I hope they get another chance against Kentucky, maybe at some point in the tournament. But maybe I shouldn't wish that after what we've seen the last two games. But it would be nice to get a little revenge on Kentucky and maybe put the nail in Mark Pope's coffin there in Lexington.
Yeah, I don't know if I want to play Kentucky again. I'm fed up with them.
It's been rough.
Yeah, where losing to them another time would just make me rip all of the hair on my head out. And it would most likely be in the SEC tournament. I don't think that they would set it up where Tennessee plays Kentucky in the NCAA tournament again, not 2 years in a row. And so the SEC tournament is just, it's not meaningless, but it's sort of meaningless. I mean, in a little, to some extent, it's kind of meaningless. So, beside the point, I think they are rounding into form in an exciting way. And one of the big pieces is Ethan Berg, who has suddenly been putting in serviceable minutes and specifically playing defense in a way that I think is usable, which is really nice. And then he scored a couple of clutch baskets in that game. Specifically, Tennessee got down by like 6 or 7 points in the second half. And out of a timeout, he had a big bucket that helped in sort of a run back. Tennessee eventually got the lead after that. So I'm very optimistic at this point that there's something with this team where if they can get the right matchups and make the right moves, an Elite Eight again is very possible. And then, at that point, if it can be like it would have been, say, when did you lose to Loyola? No. So when you lost to Florida Atlantic in the Sweet 16, the next game would have been against a sort of middling Kansas State team that sort of made it there by chance, and you would have made a Final Four that year. And maybe you get an opportunity like that where just the Elite Eight team, it's one of Alabama's Final Fours. They play, I forget even who it was that they played, but it was some team that made it there by a miracle. And then I think it was Clemson. I think they played Clemson in the Elite Eight.
I think so, yeah.
And then they just steamrolled them to make a Final Four. Like, maybe you can get there like that. And it could be there for this team. You're going to be a 4 or 5 seed, which has to play the 1 seed in the Sweet 16. So
you have to play them eventually anyway, usually.
Yes. To be the best, you got to beat the best. And you have one of the best players in America on your team, in Nate Ament, one of the best point guards in America on your team, and Jacoby Gillespie. And then if everything else can fill in around him, if JP Estrella can come back from this injury and be effective, there's a lot of elements to it.
That's what I was going to say. Should they hold Estrella out until the SEC tournament and just not even play him? Because it sounds like it's a deal with his foot where there's not like a specific injury that he's dealing with. It's like soreness where and you could make that worse, I'm sure, by playing. Do you hold him out and wait so you have him for the tournament for March? Or do he says he wants to come back against Missouri this week. I mean, what's the right move there, you think? If he says he can play, it's hard not to play him, but at the same time,
yeah,
you don't want, foot injuries, basketball, those are brutal.
Well, and it's just continued to nag him, and you don't want it to continue like that. So I don't know. That's tough, but we'll see what they do. As I said, I'm skeptical of this game tomorrow. You absolutely should win. You're going to be a favorite. Very winnable game. But I sort of had a similar feeling about this one in Vandy. I had penciled in a loss. I had said this is a loss because this is just, you're walking into a hornet's nest and this team's good. And, it is what it is. We'll get them when we play them in Thompson Bowling. And then they went and they got that game. And they didn't even steal it or anything like that. They just went and just took it and just won that basketball game in a nice back and forth effort. And just, really stepped up their defense. That was so encouraging to see. That was some retro Barnes defense there. Retro to the last 3 years of Rick Barnes saying just really encouraging. And I liked it a lot. And so we'll see what happens there. I'm saying my prayers if they can move up a seed line, and they'll get it figured out. And let's finish with baseball, Zach. Well, actually, let's mention in between here. There's not a ton to talk about with this because they've been winning by such large margins. It's almost uninteresting. The softball team, Karen Weekly, has, at least to this point, built a buzzsaw. And they have mowed down not just these bye teams. I mean, it has been, 4 top 10 wins to this point. They played in a tournament in Florida, and they weren't, like, those games weren't close. They played like top 10 UCLA and beat them like 11-0, 11 to, forget the exact score, 11-3 or something. Just pounded them. And so that's look out for that one.
Long way to go to June, but that definitely could be a fun summer for the softball team.
Yes, and that I want that one really bad before Karen retires. She needs a World Series. I want it for her badly. So hopefully this is the team that can bring that. They have pitching depth beyond Carlin, it looks like. Obviously the bats are working. So I'm pretty excited there. On the flip side of that coin, baseball team under Josh Elander, sweep in the first series, then a relatively easy midweek win. And Kent State came in, and Tennessee lost the series.
Almost got swept.
Nelson.
I mean, really.
Almost got, won the Friday night game on a walk-off. Very fun.
Which was
game.
Awesome, yes.
Yeah, it was. Tyler Myatt with a moonshot won that one for Tennessee. But they kind of got big boyed by Kent State, and it was ugly. The pitching was pretty good. I'll say, especially the starting pitching for Tennessee. I've seen enough so far in this season to say the starting pitching is going to be very solid in this season. That's hardly up for debate, in my opinion. Beyond that, Brandon Arvidsson still isn't playing, and some of the guys.
Oh, he did pitch an inning, right? He pitched one inning.
No, he did. That's right. Yeah. Sorry. Yes. But Frederick looks good. He came in, put in some nice innings for you. Braden Krenzel looks pretty solid. Beyond that, maybe some fall off. But a pretty good set of pitchers. But the hitting, you had the same exact problem that you were having. It really happened more later in the SEC season last year. You started off very strong last season. I want to say they start off like 20-0 or something last year. And then it fell off during the SEC season. But late into that SEC season last year, a very common theme was 1 for 11 with runners in scoring position. 2 for 15. And I believe it was game 2 of this series against Kent State, 0 for 15 runners in scoring position. That is losing baseball. And there's not a way around that. The toughest part of that is that your former hitting coach is now your head coach. So there's not really a great excuse as to why the power has not picked up. But Elander obviously has a history of having guys who can absolutely rake. So he's figured it out at points in his career, no doubt. But can he do it as head coach? I would ask it this way, Zach. 1 to 5. Where are you at on the concern scale?
I don't think I'm concerned at all just yet because it's such a small sample size. I mean, it's not even March yet. I do understand, you should win the series against Kent State at home. I honestly I thought Josh Elander was maybe a little too hard on them after that loss yesterday. I mean, it's like this is unacceptable. And you got the power T on your chest, and I get it. I mean, they didn't play great baseball at times. There was some sloppiness on fielding and throwing balls around. You just can't do that. You can't give these teams extra runs. I mean, Kent State's not a bad team. It's not like they lost to a team that's has no chance to make the NCAA tournament. Kent State's probably going to be in the NCAA tournament and playing a regional somewhere. So it's not a bad team. I mean, and those guys clearly came in motivated and ready to knock Tennessee off. And we've seen that before. Maybe Tennessee wins a close game, Saturday, and we look at this completely different because you win the series and you just lose on Sunday. I mean, baseball, as we say all the time, can be a strange sport. They could turn on the bats this weekend, although it's going to be a tough deal this weekend. You're going up against three really good teams in UCLA, Arizona State, and Virginia Tech. UCLA's got like the best player in the country right now. That's just the shortstop that's hitting everything out. So you have your hands full this weekend. But you can instantly change the narrative this weekend too, and I think that's important for Elander because with Vitello gone, we know that that's going to be a narrative and a conversation all season long. Whether anybody says it or not, we're all going to be keeping an eye on what Vitello does with the Giants, and we're going to be comparing that, or at least comparing past success and what Tennessee's done, and we're going to be keeping up with all that. And if Elander really sputters and you get into April and this team's at 500 or something, which I don't think is going to happen, it's going to be a lot of noise surrounding him. And I don't think I'm alone in this. I don't think Josh Elander was Danny White's guy. I think Danny White felt like he had to hire Elander because of all the support for him from the current team, from former players, from other people in the program. If he would have not hired Elander, it's just it was a no-brainer move for Danny White to make. But at the same time, if this season goes drastically south, I mean, I don't think Danny White will hesitate to make it a one and done and move on and try to find his own guy. So Elander's going to have to find a way to block out the noise for this team. I think that was Vitello's superpower. I don't think Vitello's, baseball acumen is obviously elite or he wouldn't be at the level he's at. But I don't think he was this baseball savant that was reinventing the game either. I think his superpower was getting these players to play with confidence, to block out the noise, and just go play. When these kids would just go play, nobody could touch them. And at times we've seen them press, in 24, even early in that season, before they went on to win a championship. We saw that from them at times. And that's going to happen in baseball. It happens to people in the big leagues. It happens to the best players in the world. You see them go through slumps where they quit believing in themselves. They're the same hitter. It's the same game, and they can't hit anything. Everybody goes through it. How quickly can Elander flip it and get them in the right mindset is really going to determine how the season goes and his fate, because you can let this stuff go on too long and you can lose a team quickly. Because trust me, Tennessee's got a lot of talent on that roster, and if things go south, there's going to be a lot of coaches working those back channels, just like Tony Vitello used to do, trying to swipe some talent from Tennessee.
I hope in no way does it even come close to any of that, because I'm not concerned either at this moment. Obviously, if we get further into the season and things don't get better, there's going to be real conversations to be had. But at this moment, you have serious talent on this team. And I also want to give a shout out. That Kent State team is good. That's a good baseball team. And I think if Tennessee was going to win that series, it was going to have to be like, was it the 2024 team that played Evansville in the Super Regional?
Yeah, I think that was around the time Vitello. That was when Vitello had the freak out on the media. Yeah. And
they just sort of had to outscore them. Like, that Evansville team was good, even though they were a mid-major. It was a good baseball team, and they beat Tennessee in one of those games, and then Tennessee ultimately beat them and made it to the World Series. But Uh, I that was just a skillful baseball team with a bunch of old guys on it and a coach that'd been there for forever, and it looked that way. Chris says it in the comments. He says their defense was really good, other than the one error that they made. Yeah, where they sailed it past home, and Abernathy was that the infield or the home run where Abernathy turned? Was it a triple?
Yeah, it was a
That
triple. He
Abernathy
got thrown out. He
That's
got
what it
thrown out
was.
at home. They overturned it.
Yeah, that's right. But yeah, it was a good baseball team, and it wasn't that good. You should have won. I'm not making that kind of an excuse here, but it was a formidable team that you lost to. But you gotta figure out the middle of that lineup. I said it last week. You got to figure out the middle of that lineup. You had been hitting well to that point, and it has to be more than Henry Ford. And it has to be more than just Blaine Brown. And Blaine Brown didn't have a great weekend. After having such an awesome weekend the week before.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that progresses through the season. As the talent is unbelievable, but
baseball is such a mental game, man, and you got to bring it there too. So the talent is there, but you just got to harness it. You got to figure out the exact lineup that works. Because in this one, it was just gonna have to be you outscoring them, and they did not have that this weekend. When you just leave all those guys on base, when the bats just aren't working, when you can't get it figured out, that's how you lose a series like that. But that doesn't freak me out because most of what I saw is correctable, and I think should be fine if Elander can treat this correctly.
I will say too, this team, I mean, it's so early in the season. They haven't had, and this is true of everybody. So it's, but every team kind of reacts and responds to things differently. And again, baseball is such a weird sport. This team didn't have as many reps in the fall as you would have liked to have had for various reasons. And it's super early in the season. So, a lot of times it's kind of like the 24 team or the basketball team. You don't want to peak in February as it is. Losing a series at home, a non-conference series, is never a good look. That's always going to sting. But it's so early in the season. Hopefully, Elander uses this as a gut check for the team, and they respond in a way it's like, okay, we're not okay with that. Like, this isn't who we are, and they don't doubt themselves at all. And I don't think these kids will. Like, they got to this level for a reason. They've been the best player on every team they've been on. They're still those same guys, and you don't get to this level without having a ton of confidence in yourself. So I think they'll be able to get through it, but we got to see it. We got to see how this goes.
That's going to be it. Is just they got to figure it out. It's going to take some time, and hey, you have incredible opportunities this weekend to show yourself again. So go beat UCLA, and everything's fine. Just go beat the number one team in America. That's all.
I do want to ask you one last thing before we go.
Yeah.
Does Kim Caldwell survive this season?
I didn't even want to bring this up.
I have to.
I think she does. But if you want my personal opinion on the matter, she should already be fired. This is going to play into my reputation as the fire everybody guy. That was an experiment from the beginning. She should be fired. I think she's done. I think she's cooked. I think her style of basketball is amateurish. I don't think it works. She has done a good job recruiting, or at least the Spire people have done a good job recruiting, or whatever is going on there. I don't think it's going to be hard to recruit to Tennessee ever for anybody. And I think the team's undisciplined. She's having a hard time wrangling anybody to get them to consistently play good basketball. And so she's going to get another year, I think, because she's Danny White's higher, and he's fine, whatever. But in my opinion, especially if you miss the tournament, and there's a pretty decent chance that's about to happen. If you miss the tournament, you're done. In my opinion.
I don't see how Danny White. I know it's his hire, and I agree with a lot of what you just said. I mean, it was a huge gamble. She didn't have any major college experience, and this is no huge criticism of Caldwell. She's still 37. She's young in her coaching career. She's still finding her way. I mean, she's got a lot of years left to coach, and she didn't get to this level by mistake. But if you miss the NCAA tournament for the first time in the history of this program, like you're the coach that's responsible for that for the first time since 1982 when it became a thing. I mean, I don't know how you can keep that coach. I mean, you go from a Sweet 16 to missing the tournament, and what are you expecting in year 3? A losing record? I mean, man, I don't know. I think I think your sights have to be set much higher. I think you have to go get a coach that's done it at a high level. I don't know names because I don't know who would be willing to come and all those different things. But you got to go find somebody that's had success at a SEC, ACC, Big 12, some type of big time school, and bring them in if this doesn't get turned around over the next couple of weeks.
I mean, I think if Danny White was serious about that situation, I don't want to say she'd already be gone. That's probably impractical to do it in the middle of the season. But I think you absolutely, because you look at it, next game, LSU, that's not just a loss, it's going to be like a 40-point loss. Vanderbilt, it's at Tennessee, which maybe makes it close, but that's definitely going to be a loss. Vanderbilt's a top 5 team. What's the next? Google only listed those 2. Come on.
You've had some brutal losses this year already. The UConn loss by 30 points. The South Carolina loss, the worst in program history ever. I mean, there's just so many signs. It's like, what is there to believe in? It's like I want to, go ahead.
Okay, so Vanderbilt. Sorry, I missed. Vanderbilt is the last game, and then it's the SEC tournament. If you go into the SEC tournament, maybe lose that opening game. I mean, like Kevin says there, unless they get dog walked the rest of the season, they're going to get dog walked in those last 2 games. That's what's about to happen, unless they play a game that I haven't seen them play this season. I mean, they lost by South Carolina by 43 points. 43. That's absolutely ridiculous. And then this Oklahoma game, it was closer, but they were never going to win that game. And here, like I said, if Danny White was serious, you go, hey, guys, my bad. You fire, and then you go make a real hire. And go hire Vanderbilt's coach, Jay Ralph, except a lot of people think she might be waiting for Gino to retire, which would make sense, I guess. She's UConn. But, hey, good times.
Go do something bold. LSU did. LSU's not afraid to be bold. It doesn't always work out for them, but sometimes it does.
But Danny White's never done anything like that in his career. That's not he's the make a cute hire guy, and it's an outside the box. I thought outside the box, and I hired Nate Oates, and look at that. Nate Oates is great, and except Nate Oates has now gone to Alabama. He made a Final Four, but he also plays this goofy style of basketball that if the threes aren't falling, they can lose to friggin' Mercer or somebody,
And he's put himself in the Dan Hurley category of hated, disliked coaches nationwide, which is pretty tough to unite fan bases like that against one coach.
I mean, and I think when you lose these last 2, what's the current record? They're only going to have, the Lady Vols will only have 16 wins on the season.
Ooh, they're
going to be 16-12. That's not a tournament resume.
You might get like the UNC in the men's tournament where if there's a bubble team and UNC's there, they get the bump because they're the big brand. The Lady Vols brand is still the Lady Vols brand, even though it hasn't been the same since Pat Summitt stepped down. But that could still be the tiebreaker, I guess, even though they would never say that. I could see that being the case and them sneaking in that way.
I mean, if they get rolled in these last 2 games and then maybe lose in the first couple of games in the SEC tournament, they do not deserve to get in my opinion. But Barbie,
we'll see.
Like you said, they may make it in on name alone, but
yeah, there's just been so much from the calling out her team, and I'm not questioning everything she's done because I'm not in the locker room. I don't know exactly what she's facing or what message she's trying to send or why she's trying to send it. But the perception of it, just publicly, of calling out your team, saying they quit, and then blowing off the handshake after the Ole Miss game, which again, emotions run high after a game. I'm not looking too much into that, but the perception of it is just not great when you throw the losing in with it, like historical losses. That's going to be tough. I think that's going to be if they lose these last couple games, especially if they miss the tournament, I think the noise is going to be super loud these next few weeks.
Yes, but maybe they pull a miracle win. I don't know where.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, you go beat LSU, and you can suddenly the conversation changes a bit.
Exactly.
But that's probably not happening.
That's it. Charlie Burris, Zach Reagan, thank you. Commented. We say it every week, mean it every week. We'll continue on this, but if me and Zach's schedules diverge like they had the last couple of weeks, we'll just do another recorded segment. But hopefully it'll be another live show next week. So join us then, and no matter what, A to Z Sports Tennis, no matter what happens. So go check it out, and that is it. Yeah, we'll see what happens this week, and we will talk to y'all next week.
See you guys later.